Warning, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar on reaching international customers online. Today, we'll be talking about the online opportunity for exporters and how best exporters can create their digital strategies to make the most of it. We'll try to cover as much as we can, including e-commerce, social media, and internationalizing your website. I'm William Barnes-Graham, and I am the Digital Content Manager at Open to Export. We are a government-supported online community helping small UK businesses get ready to sell overseas through our step-by-step guides and articles, our regular webinar program, our RC Experts Forum, and our Export Action planning tool. Please visit the website and check these out. You can ask questions at any point during the webinar using the question box on the control panel to your right-hand side of your screen. We'll get to as many of these questions as we can at the end. We don't typically share slides from the presentation, but we will be recording this webinar, sending you a copy of it within a week, as well as uploading it to our website where you can view this and all of our previous webinars. I'm very glad to welcome today's presenter, Sarah Carroll. Sarah is the Director of Digital Consultancy Grow Global, where she mentors and trains clients to improve their international communications both online and offline in order to help them gain more international business and to grow global. She's one of the UK's leading experts on how to make a website international and visible in international search engines. She regularly speaks at seminars and runs masterclasses about internationalizing, localizing, and optimizing a website for international trade. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sarah.
International. Today I'm going to give you an overview of how you can reach international customers and grow your business through selling online. The agenda is, first of all, we're going to have a look at the international web opportunity, which is why you should be exporting online. We're going to look at how the international web actually works, and then we'll dive in, as William was saying, to the options for an international digital strategy. We'll have some live questions and answers at the end, and then William will run through some next steps if you want to actually start implementing some of the ideas we give you today. So there are various routes that you as a business can take to export markets. You might want to set up a local office, you might want to work with an agent or distributor, you might want to attend an exhibition, especially if you're looking to work with other businesses, i.e. business to business. You might also want to go and contact your customers directly, like if you're a service company or if you're selling technical products that need to be specified, I don't know, like an architect or a tooling company or something like that. Or, and this is where the piece that we're talking about today fits in, you might want to use the internet to sell directly to international customers online. And this is more than just having a website like as a brochure site. This is about using your website and other digital marketing techniques as an additional channel to help you to reach customers in your international markets. So can we have the first poll, please, William? Can you read out the poll, William, please?
Yeah, sure. So this is a question asking which of these describes your company's approach to selling online internationally? The options are selling online in the UK, whether you're an accidental exporter online, if you've just started online but you've planned your approach, if you're an experienced online exporter already, or none of these apply to you. I'll just let that run for a couple more seconds. And so people are still voting in the numbers. And I'll hand over to you, Sarah.
Can you read out the results, please?
So yes, the leading score is none of the above, but beyond that, it looks as though there's quite a lot of accidental exporters and a lot of people who started online but have planned the process.
Okay, those are the two most important ones. Well, if a lot of you haven't started online or online internationally, then we've got a lot of ideas for you today. So what is the international web opportunity that is open to us? So why should we be exporting and why should we be selling online internationally? Well, this is the way that we look at it. So basically, if you take a look at the figures that I'm going to put up now, there are over 7 billion people in the world. So you don't need to just sell in the UK within this domestic market. You can have customers from all around the world. Now, if you think about this, there's about 65 million people in the UK, but there's 325 million people in the USA, over 700 million in Europe, and over 4 billion people in Asia. Clearly, they might not all want your products and services, but that is a potential market we should be thinking about. Now, of those 7 billion people that are in the world, there are 3 billion people who are online. And actually 1.5 billion of those internet users are actually in Asia. So that's nearly half of all people online are actually in Asia. And that's the area where we're seeing the most growth on the internet at the moment. And if you take a look at how people are actually using the internet, they're not just accessing the web from their laptop anymore. There's now over 1 billion tablet users in the world and about 2 billion mobile internet users. And when it comes to selling online, we estimate that out of the 3 billion people that are online, about 1.5 billion people are buying online through e-commerce and about 0.75 billion are buying through their mobiles. M-commerce is actually the fastest growing area, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, we said that there's 3 billion internet users online at the moment. Both Google and Facebook have projects underway to bring internet to the rest of the world. So that's going to be twice as many potential customers as we have today. And some analysts are actually predicting that this could happen as soon as 2020. So selling online, and particularly selling online internationally, is definitely something that you should have in your business plans for the next 3 to 5 years. So if we say there are 3 billion customers across the world, where are they? Well, if you have a look at this, there are 30 top countries here by gross domestic product. So this means really that these are all people who are likely to have money to spend on your goods and services. So it's worth having a think about where your potential markets might be. And you imagine if you could just replicate the business you are doing in the UK in just 1 or 2 of these countries, say France or in Mexico, then it would really make a difference to your bottom line, even if it was just like 10% of your turnover. If we have a look country by country, these are the top 10 countries by internet users. Now we can see, and of course this is clearly related to demographics, that China and India are at the top with the most internet users. But what it's interesting to see is that in China, still only half of the population is online, and in India, only 28%. So the potential for these markets in the future is absolutely massive. These may not be the easiest markets to export to initially, but by planning it out and doing it bit by bit, we can start to reach customers in those countries. Next, you come down to the United States, and down at the bottom we've got the UK with 50-60 million people online. So, just looking at these stats, we can see that the USA market could be up to 5 times as big, according to the number of internet users. There are also some countries on this table that you might be a little bit more surprised to see. Nigeria has a really big internet economy which is emerging, and Indonesia has just come in the top 10 for the first time and actually knocked France out of the top 10. So you can see that the whole world before us is actually changing. And these might not be the first countries that you would think of exporting to, and more familiar countries like Ireland, Belgium, France, Germany is still more than valid. We just want you to be aware that if you are trying to reach customers online, the world is changing. So do think about some of these countries that we have mentioned here. Now, if we look at it from another point of view, and looking at those countries that we were just looking at, a lot of them are actually English speaking. You know, if you looked at this graph here, you can see that English still is the largest number, or still has, sorry, the largest number of internet users, but Chinese is quite close behind. And okay, you know, doing business in Chinese might not be the easiest thing for us. So depending on your products and service, you could perhaps, you know, just do in business with India or the USA still in English, yeah, and certainly in Nigeria. So there's huge potential to trade online in English only. In fact, the British Council says that out of the 7 billion people in the world, about 1.75 billion have English as their working language. So we have more than enough potential customers who speak English without the need to necessarily do business in other languages. But if we do go into other languages, then you can see this graph, and you know, this is the story here. Mostly after English, there are Chinese internet users on there, and they're predicting that within the next year or so there will be more Chinese internet users than there will be English-speaking ones. And you know, be honest, if you were faced with a Chinese website in the local currency, would you buy from it if you didn't speak Chinese? Well, probably not. So, you know, what we need to do is to sort of put ourselves in the shoes of all these potential international customers and think about how they might feel buying from a .co.uk website in English and in pounds. So what can we do to make them feel comfortable buying from our websites? And looking further down this graph, it's also worth noting that there are other languages such as Spanish, Arabic, French, German, Portuguese, and these are all world languages and spoken in more than one country. So if you put a page on your website, say, in Spanish, it might be that it would appear in search engines in, say, Mexico or Argentina as well as Spain, and there's 21 Spanish-speaking markets all around the world. So by using this method, we can start reaching customers all over the world in their local languages. So today we are talking about e-commerce, and the figures here are massive, as we can see. Global business to consumer e-commerce sales are predicted to be $1.6 trillion and are growing at a staggering 25% a year on year. And business-to-business e-commerce is expected to be even bigger and have even larger growth. Now, when you think our economy is doing quite well in the UK and growing at like 2 to 3%, by investing in e-commerce, we can really outpace that growth and get ahead with a competitive advantage. On this graph, you can see that most of the sales take place, you know, regionally. In Europe and North America, there's quite a lot of sales, as you would expect. But if you look at Asia, the growth there is absolutely massive. Admittedly, it might be tricky to do business, for example, in China for most of us, but you can get help from Open to Export, UK Trade and Investment, the China-Britain Business Council, and many other organisations out there too. And for example, Singapore has been named as one of the easiest places to do business in the world. So it could be that you could go into Singapore market first and then move to other parts of Asia afterwards. So taking this down one more level, where could we be selling? Well, China is the biggest e-commerce market in the world, and e-marketplaces are very popular. We'll look at these in a little bit. In the USA, online selling is still growing massively at 15% year on year, and 87% of people are actually buying online already. Then next comes us in the UK, which actually surprises quite a lot of people. We are one of the strongest e-commerce economies in the world, and while our market is smaller, because our population is smaller, we do make the highest number of purchases per year. Next comes Japan. Mobile commerce is very popular there, as well as Rakuten, a very prominent e-marketplace. And finally, Germany is in 5th place, which is seeing some of the fastest growth in Europe and probably will overtake the UK at some point soon as more e-commerce is actually adopted. So, what are the reasons for internationalizing our websites? Well, first of all, 70% of online inquiries are not in English, so you would be precluding that amount of the population by not selling internationally. and 90% of European internet users do visit websites in their own language first. Even if they have English as their first language, they would search, say, in German or French. A stat you may have heard about before is that customers are 4 times more likely to buy from a website in their own language, and they will stay on the website twice as long as well. If all those facts haven't already convinced you, exporters who use the web are reported to bring in twice as much revenue than those who are not using the internet. And the final thing I wanted to share with you in this section is that cross-border online trade stats say that it is increasing 7-fold by 2020. So basically the UK is one of the most advanced e-commerce markets in the world. So what this means is that although we may struggle and put a lot of effort into our own websites and getting them right and attracting customers to them, at least we know that we should have a website and an optimized website. So if we start taking this approach to other markets around the world, it actually gets easier because many countries are not as advanced in developing and optimizing their websites as we are. So you might actually be able to attract and gain customers more easily than you could do in the UK. So what I wanted to do next is give you a quick summary of how the international web works. We run full-day masterclasses and workshops on this, so this is just an introduction to it. Well, here is a list of the leading search engines, and Google does have about an 80–90% share of all the searches that are performed across the world. This isn't true for China, and it's not true for Russia. In China, they use a search engine called Baidu, and in Russia, they use Yandex. Also, in the USA, 12% of searches are performed with either Yahoo or Bing. So we can't say that it's all about Google, though mostly internationally speaking, it actually is. But even if we're talking about Google and the 90% of people around the world that are using it, we don't mean that they'll necessarily be searching on google.co.uk or say even google.com. They will actually be searching on their local version of Google. So in France, they will be using google.fr. In Australia, they will be searching on google.com.au. So we need to make sure that we are visible in all these local versions of Google, as well as in the international search engines like Baidu and Yandex, if those are markets that you're targeting. So if you only have a .co.uk site in English, this will do well in google.co.uk, i.e. the UK version of Google, but it won't do so well on any of the other local versions of Google that are out there. So if you're exporting to Australia, you need to be doing well in google.com.au, as that's where your potential customers will be searching. So it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? So that's why having pages or localized content in the local language will actually help you in your international search engines and actually keep your visitors on your website when they come. So on to the next section, which is options for an international digital strategy. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about are the options for an international e-commerce. There's so much opportunity out there. What should we do and how should we go about it? So let's find out what you're doing at the moment. Can we have the second poll, please, William?
Yes, we can. So the second question is, how do you access your international customers online? The options are by using local websites, for example, .fr. You have pages in other languages on your main website. You may sell through e-marketplaces in other countries, sell through social media in other countries, or use international agents, distributors, and stockists. So I shall just leave that open for a couple, 10 seconds. And I will close it now. So the Perhaps not particularly surprisingly, it's 43% say they use international agents, distributors, and stockists, but 22% have local websites and 21% have pages in other languages on their main website. Back to you, Sarah.
That is brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, that's good that so many of you have started to sell internationally, and we'll look through some of the options that you can entertain now. So before we go into that, it's really important that you do lots of research to determine which of your export markets you need to choose. You'll need to consider countries, say, with the highest GDP per capita or GDP growth, but you might want to consider other factors such as the ease of doing business or the ease of trading across borders, and obviously the demand for your products and or services in your sector. But there are 4 important factors which we've got on this slide here for selling online, which might be the volume of overall e-commerce and m-commerce sales, which you see in the first 2 columns there, and the number of internet users. This could be your potential e-commerce market, and the number of mobile internet users, which will be your potential m-commerce market. And you can see the spread of different countries that you might find that you can do good business in online there. So what are the different channels for selling internationally online? Well, some of you are already doing this. 22% of you are using local websites and 21% have pages in other languages. But what we always advise is just to start using your .co.uk website or your .com website in the UK, and you know, because it's in English and it is the World Wide Web, people will find you if they're very determined to already know of you. And we need to make sure that we're building the best world-class website we possibly can. The next stage is what we call like the international e-commerce website, but it's still keeping it in English. It's about adapting your website to make it look like you're open for business internationally. Small changes can be made, like putting your telephone number with an international dialing code, or putting like "we deliver internationally" on your website. The next stage is to move your .co.uk website onto a .com if you haven't already done that, and start to sell in other currencies. Usually companies start by selling in pounds, euros and dollars. And by having a .com, you will be more visible on search engines around the world and will attract more international customers to your website by default. Then you have a decision point of how you're going to reach more of these international customers, and there are a number of ways that you can do it. One would be what we call country pages on your .com. So that would be, I don't know if you've ever seen Apple.com's website, and then you have a like /fr, or you could set up a separate company website, for example, abc.fr. Another route, which is what quite a lot of you are already doing, 43% of you, is using your international stockists or distributors and listing your products and services on their websites, because they're already established with a website in their local search engines. It's actually quite a tactical and quick way of attracting international sales. The next alternative would be e-marketplaces. There are like 14, 15 Amazons around the world and 27 versions of eBay, and there's a whole host of others as well, which we'll show you in a second. Some people launch social media and pay-per-click campaigns internationally, and don't forget as well about selling via social media, which is now known as S-commerce, or even via mobile, which is M-commerce. So what I'm going to do now is look at each of these options a little more closely. So in terms of the websites, there are a number of options. So you could set up a dedicated local website, for example, a .co.uk for the UK or a .de for Germany. And as you can see, we've got a little example here of one of our clients we've worked with, Challenge Trophies, who set up a dedicated German website. The next thing that you could do is set up what we call little mini sites, which are hanging off the main .com website. So for example, you could have .com/GB for the UK, .com/DE for Germany, and in this instance we have an example of the travel wrap company, which has a little mini site for the USA. The third approach using websites would be to actually sell through your agents, your distributors, stockists, retailers, partners, and you actually work with them to optimize your product listings on their websites. This is an example here of Mathmos, who actually have their Australian website run by a stockist over there. So the next approach is to sell through international e-marketplaces. Now, UK Trade and Investment has a groundbreaking, what they call e-exporting program, and they've identified about 400 business-to-consumer e-marketplaces around the world. These are some of the biggest ones you can see on here. We all know about Amazon and eBay, and remember that they all have their local versions, such as Amazon France or Amazon.com.br. You can use these selling platforms to reach local customers, and they then sell in their local currency and in the local language. As you can see on here, there's Alibaba, Taobao or Tmall in China, Rakuten, which started in Japan and Asia and is now becoming quite a globally marketplace. You've got Mercado Libre, which sells in Spanish and Portuguese in South America. And then in India, you've got a couple of marketplaces that are emerging as well, Flipkart and Snapdeal. In Asia, it's very interesting to know that people would prefer to buy from a marketplace than from your own website. It could be that if you're going to go into China and a few other countries, that your digital strategy should be different. So say in Europe you sell through your website, in China you sell through e-marketplaces, and in Latin America you sell through, say, stockists or distributors. Now, some people like to just keep their UK website and start with a Google AdWords or pay-per-click campaign. The important thing about this is to make sure that you are actually getting it working and to get it right in English first. You need to think about structuring a campaign, carrying out your keyword analysis in English first, British English probably, and identifying negative keywords as well as looking at quality scores. Next, you can expand your campaigns to run in other English-speaking countries by carrying out keyword analysis in different versions of English. We all know about like the difference between, trousers and pants and different spellings of jewelry, pajamas, in the USA. You might also be putting adverts up featuring local currencies and local delivery options. Finally, what you can do is to run local language campaigns by carrying out local language keyword analysis, creating local language landing pages, and having local language ads. It's so much better, and it's actually even crucial really to do this if you're launching a campaign, say for France in the French market, and your customers land on a page in English. You're going to get a high level of dropouts, and quite frankly you could be wasting quite a lot of the money you've invested in your campaigns. So another way of selling internationally is actually selling through the social media networks now. This is a much newer channel to international markets and is known as Ecommerce. The main global social media networks offering this are the Buy button on Facebook, the Buy Now on Twitter, the Buy It on Pinterest, and Shop Now on Instagram. You can also sell through some of the international social media networks like WeChat in China, where you can set up stores or attach a shop to your profile. It's actually an amazing statistic that if Facebook was a country, its population would be larger than China with 1.5 billion users. It's actually closely followed by YouTube with 1 billion users. All these large global social networks are available in various different languages, so you can communicate with your customers in different countries speaking different languages. Facebook, for example, supports up to 90 languages. So we were talking about mobile earlier, and it's massive here in the UK this year, as well as in Japan and South Korea, where for the first time over 50% of people carried out e-commerce transactions via their mobile phones. Globally, this figure is predicted to be 40% by the end of this year. So it's another thing to add to the list of things to do, and it's absolutely critical that all your websites are now mobile friendly and ready what we call responsive, to deal with this traffic, and that they're actually optimized for mobile. Now, today is Black Friday, destined to be one of the fastest growing, fastest netting days, and we think that shoppers are moving online to find all their bargains. And actually what happened today was between midnight and 1 a.m. there were twice as many people purchased than last year, so there'll be a lot of very tired people today. The biggest ever grossing e-commerce day was in the world was Singles Day on the 11th of November 2015, which was sort of like an alternative Valentine's Day in China, where people buy presents for themselves. And here's some of the other biggest e-commerce days, and you can see that quite a lot of them are coming up this month. We've got Cyber Monday, Green Friday, we're going to have the Boxing Day, and then the January sales. So, William, if we can go on to our last poll, please.
So our last poll is just a review of the webinar today. So it's kind of, do you think you'll sell more online after joining this webinar? I'll leave that for a few seconds. Slightly brave of you, Sarah, to do this, but respect you for it. I'll just give that 1, 2, 3, and close. So I'll share the results, and it's very positive. Well done. So it's 54% say yes internationally, 40% will have to think about it, which is understandable, and 2% in the UK, 4% no. So do you want to round up, Sarah?
Yeah. Well, that's great news that over 50% of you will think about selling internationally online. Yeah, and do take your time, go through it, and do make sure that you've got your UK online selling, completely sorted before you start trying to go for the international. If you need any further help putting together an international digital strategy, or need help with making your websites international, or if you've got any questions at all from today, as this was a real whistle-stop tour in this webinar, then really do let us know. Here are contact details. So thank you so much for your time. Have a great weekend, and back to William for the question and answers.
Thank you, Sarah, and yeah, really great and comprehensive overview of the digital opportunity, and some great tips for making the most of it. So I really hope everyone has found that useful. And as Sarah said, we're now going to open the floor to questions. We've had a fair few sent in, some sent in advance, but also a few sent in live. Remember, you can ask questions using the control panel to the right-hand side, so please feel free to do that. The first question we have is from Paul, and he's asked about understanding local countries' culture relating to their online communications. What kind of tips would you give for understanding kind of online cultures per country, Sarah?
Yes, I mean, it's really, really important. I mean, the first thing is to get your website structured, as we were saying, for international, but then over time it'd be really good if you could customize it and localize it for the local countries. It's always great if you can have somebody from the, that's used to working or from the country and speaks the country on your team, or you can get them in to help. Another thing for your own research might actually be, I don't know if you know that there's a whole study of which is called intercultural management. And there are a couple of gurus. One's called Trompenaars, and one is called Hofstede, and they've written books about like marketing across cultures and doing business across cultures and managing teams across cultures. So yeah, it might be worth downloading one onto your Kindle, or actually walking into a bookshop and getting one and finding out a little bit more information.
Cool, thank you. And
thank you.
We've had a question from Vince. This is kind of just more about social media in terms of marketing, in terms of online buzz and kind of, I don't know, memes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, to what extent would you encourage kind of users to look at this use of social media, and what tips would you give for doing that internationally?
Yeah, I think you need to, when you're using social media and internationally, one thing is a bit like we're talking about the culture, you really do need to have somebody that speaks the language and that it understands the culture, because it's not just about translating, you know, say posts or blogs or whatever, and putting them out. You actually need to know the tone in which you're actually communicating with somebody internationally. So that would be really my first bit of advice about doing it. And also, if you're putting together a social media strategy, whether it's for the UK or for any other country, is actually understand why you're trying to do it. You know, a lot of using social media can be for actually building up your brand and starting to have conversations with people, and then just try and understand how much, you know, that's actually going to drive your actual sales, or whether it is more of a marketing opportunity. But certainly, you know, like we've saying, the Ecommerce side of things that we were showing you on here is starting to come out. It's still sort of quite early days for it, but you know, see if you are going to have an online social media strategy, then integrate some of the Ecommerce right from the start. Thank you.
Thank you. And just another kind of question kind of around that topic is from Leo. He's asked kind of, do you have any tips for disentangling your personal and your business social media accounts, say, especially something like Facebook, where most people will have a personal as well as a business profile?
Yeah, you can get a bit mixed up, can't you, if you end up, you know, putting business posts on personal ones. I mean, personally, it would be better, you know, I would always advise to keep them separate. So, for example, if you, I mean, it depends if you're starting off, you know, with a smaller business, then you may have been using your personal ones. But I would advise you keep your personal, say, Facebook and LinkedIn ones separate, and then attach to them a business profile for LinkedIn and for, say, Facebook. If you put into Google a guide to Facebook for business and LinkedIn for business, it'll actually show you how to do that. There's some startup guides there, which is quite handy. Thank you.
Thank you. And just touching on LinkedIn, I mean, it's a whole new kind of world in terms of business transactions and stuff like that. I mean, what Christian's asked about sales lead generation through LinkedIn. What kind of tips would you give for using LinkedIn as an exporter?
Yeah, I mean, as an exporter, it's absolutely brilliant to identify clients. Or, I mean, we had an example the other day. I was with a client, and they were trying to get into Barney's in Canada. It's one of the big department stores. And actually, when I put it into mine, we actually found out who the international purchasing manager was. So you can use it just for, you know, sort of trying there. There are other parts to it as well for, you know, Sales Navigator, and you can upgrade to Premium. And people just, you know, people tend to respond to LinkedIn, you know, sort of requests and, you know, messages a little bit more than they do to just a sort of unsolicited email as well, especially if they see that you're connected to somebody that they already know. So it's definitely, again, there are loads of guides on LinkedIn and how to use LinkedIn for lead generation. But we can answer more about that offline if you'd like to.
Cool, thank you. Just remember everyone that you can ask questions using the control panel to the right-hand side. So yeah, please do make use of that. I mean, one question we've had in from Jackie is just asking for tips about translating into Chinese. Kind of where do you start kind of working in another language? What is the best kind of process for that?
Yeah, it's really, really important. Tempting as though it may be, well, two things is often tempting when you're starting off. And, you know, to be honest, if you're starting off on a shoestring, then I completely understand. But, you know, usually, you know, people do start using, you know, like the Google Translate or a online translation service. If you were selling something like completely easy, I don't know, like a blue jumper or something like that, then you might get away with using the online translation. But personally, if you're needing to protect your brand, and particularly if you have a verbal identity, then it's absolutely crucial to get any translation, whether it be to Chinese or any other language, done by a professional translator. Now, so, you know, and the other thing is that a lot of people actually go to friends and family, or somebody says, oh yeah, my cousins, aunties, you know, whatever, speaks that language. And again, that's a good start. But, you know, you've seen loads of translation sort of mishaps yourself. So it's, you know, it's really good to have it translated. In terms of the process, it's always important to make sure that you've written good copy in English to start with, and do think that we always use quite a lot of technical terms and jargon and things like that when we're writing about our products. So do sort of take a step back and put an international hat on and say, if somebody was in India and they were speaking English as a second language, or somebody was speaking English as a third language, would they really get what I mean? And then once you've got that, then send it off to your translation agency or your freelancer for translation. That would be my best check. And then when it comes back to you, if you do know somebody that speaks that language, then sort of almost triple check and give it back to them to do a sense check. Okay, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Very sage advice. And we've had a question from Erica, which is about the Middle East. She's asked, do you think consumers in the Middle East search for products and services online initially, as we tend to, or is the culture different there? I mean, what was the culture there, would you say, online?
Yeah, I mean, they're not buying yet as much online. They are avid social media users, and something interesting to note as well is I would always put information up for the Middle East, say in English and in Arabic as well, because a lot of people do actually like searching in English, but it is also good to have it in Arabic, because also a lot of people are still searching in Arabic. So yeah, absolutely, it's a massive and emerging market. There's also quite a few e-marketplaces over there. There's one like Tejuri, and so you can think about listing your products, particularly like fashion or products that would be good in a mall, in one of these online malls over there as well.
And you touched on it in the presentation, but we've also had a question from Andrew about targeting Africa. I mean, it looks like Nigeria's got a growing market, but what about Africa in general as a continent?
Well, I think there are millions and millions of customers, and for example, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is one of the biggest French-speaking countries in the world now, and again, the markets are emerging. Now, they are very advanced over there in their mobile payment methods, so it's in their mobile banking, because obviously, not everybody can reach sort of like bricks and mortar banks. So do investigate that side of things. And if you've got products and services that are suitable for the market and you're happy to go into an emerging market, then like I was saying before, you can actually get quite a foothold by going, especially online, by going in and being present before some of the either local competitors or your competitors from elsewhere around the world coming into that market. So yeah, go for it.
So Africa is an online opportunity then. That sounds quite exciting. We get quite a lot of questions on our site about exporting to Africa, because not many people are talking about it so much. So it's definitely something very interesting development.
Exactly.
A question here from Stephen. He just asked, can you make any comments regarding product categories that are suitable for e-commerce or unsuitable for e-commerce for reasons such as perishability, value, or export restrictions?
Yeah, I mean that's quite a general question. If you were to be wanting to sell onto e-marketplaces, I mentioned the e-exporting program that UK Trade and Investment are running, and actually they have a team of digital trade advisors. And so if it is a product that you think could be sold in that way, then it may be worth getting in contact with them after this. You can go to the UKTI website on gov.uk and get in touch with them that way, because they can actually have a look at which products sell well on which marketplaces around the world. So it's almost like a matching service, so you can sort of do a bit of market research that way. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you. We're getting some really good questions in at the moment, so yeah, keep them coming. A question from Daniel, which is, how do you work around the Great Firewall of China when selling via your website into the Chinese market?
That is a brilliant question. Yes, there is the Great Firewall of China, and the advice is always, if you're selling into China, is to actually host your website within China on a Chinese host, and obviously have it in Chinese. But note, when I was saying earlier that a lot of people within China, and I think it's about 3/4 of people, actually prefer to buy from e-marketplaces like the Tmall, Taobao, and Alibaba, the ones that we were talking to you about earlier. So it would be great, actually, if you could, consider whether it's actually a website that you need to set up over there, or actually whether you'd be better off selling through one of the e-marketplaces. And there are loads more apart from just those big ones as well. And again, the digital trade advisors at UK Trade and Investment would be more than happy to help you out deciding which route to take.
And in terms of setting up a kind of a website in a kind of a overseas domain, we had a question from Sarah who was looking into purchasing a .de URL, but when she was looking into it, she found she couldn't own one of those unless she had an office in Germany. Kind of what advice would you give to that particular case, and kind of what kind of tips would you give in terms of finding kind of domestic domains in international markets?
Yeah, they can be tricky. The best thing to do is to go to an international domain registration company. There's 3 or 4 of them that are out there. If you put them into Google, they'll come up. And on there, it'll tell you the restrictions for each country. Now, the way it works is that all of these domains are sold by individual, what are they called, registries. So they, I wouldn't say they make up their own rules, but they have all their own restrictions about what can be sold. In a case like that, some of these international domain registration companies can act as what's called a trustee. So you pay a little bit of a fee. It's usually around $30 or $40, and they will be able to provide you with like a local address in that country. The requirements differ though from country to country, so it's really important to have a look at most of them within the EU, because we're in the EU, we can actually get now. But in some countries like Australia, you have to have a local company, or you have to have an Australian trademark before you can register the domain. In other countries like Japan, there are 2 types of domains. So there's .co.jp, which is reserved more for Japanese businesses, whereas the .jp we can get as international businesses. So you need to go on to one of these international domain registration companies and check out the requirements for each country. They're also a little bit more expensive usually than the UK. Domains in the UK are incredibly cheap. You can get them for $1.99 and $10.99. But if you think, it's not really going to cost you that much to set up a website internationally compared to going and setting up an office in a country. So it's well worth the investment, also to protect your brand. Okay, thank you.
Cool, thank you. We'll just ask a couple more questions now. So Leo's asked, is there any practical help for actual kind of website development via agencies? He's based in Northern Ireland, but just kind of what advice would you give in terms of using agencies, or would you say do it yourself, hire someone? What advice would you give in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, there are absolutely hundreds and hundreds of web agencies out there. Not all of them are familiar with developing international websites. The best thing to do is actually ask them for case studies to see if, like previous clients, to see if they've actually done any for international websites. And if they have, then obviously you know that you're in safe hands. If they haven't done, then if you contact us, we know a few that we've been working with, trying to train them up to do that, and we can point you in the right direction.
Cool, thank you. And a question from John. He sells kind of comprehensive engineering services, but he doesn't sell them online per se, but he's trying to generate soft conversion, soft leads through having kind of people download white papers and case studies. Do you have any tips kind of in terms of converting those kind of soft conversions in a very kind of information B2B kind of environment?
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking today about actually selling products and or services online, but the approach of what we were saying about getting the visibility in the local search engines applies equally to service companies as well. So again, if you're targeting people in the USA, even if they're business-to-business customers, then it's well worth setting up the, say, /US and putting content on there that and white papers, etc., that you think will be relevant. Another thing is because you sound quite sophisticated using white papers as a way of pulling people in anyway, but make sure you do have really strong calls to action on your website, like contact us, get a quote, or whatever is the next step that you want people to do on your website. That really helps draw them in and keep them on your website. Another thing might be adding videos as well. You know, they're very popular, and we're finding, particularly this year, that they're keeping people on the website a lot longer, either a company overview or some sort of free advice, sort of front-end free advice as well. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thank you. And one more question, and this is it's a very respectable amount you've done so far. This is from Peter, and he asks, is it still advisable to have a separate website dedicated to selling in the USA, or are they happy enough to kind of working with the English version?
Yeah, I would always, for two reasons, I would always have either a dedicated website, or like we were saying, having say a .com/US website. One, so that you can get the visibility in the search engines, in the google.com, and the other one is that also that you can customize the language into American English, especially, as I said in my example, you know, if you're selling a product that has a different spelling or a different name. You know, we were working with a client the other day who sells workwear, you know, and they have waterproof pants rather than waterproof trousers and things like that. So I think, you know, there are some adaptations you would do. So I would always, even if it's only setting up 2 or 3 extra pages dedicated to a particular country, you know, make the effort to actually do that and localize it a little bit.
Cool. Well, on that note, on the kind of pants trousers note, I think it's probably time for us to wrap up. Thanks everyone for the questions. A really excellent kind of stream of them coming through at the end. So hopefully we can try to get to some of them after the webinar. So yes, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to ask them on our forum, and our speaker and our wider community of experts will generally try to come back to you within a few days. Thank you again, Sarah, for the presentation and for answering all those questions. I really hope you found it really useful, and yeah, thank you once again.
Thank you. Bye.
So we will be sending you a recording of this webinar in the next few days, and you can watch any of our previous webinars on demand by going to the Special Features tab on Open to Export, and you can there select either recent or upcoming webinars from the drop-down. Our next webinar is in just over a week, Monday week. It's Monday the 7th of December, and it's on planning for export success. A lot of exporters often, people new to export often don't realize just how much planning you can actually do, and to really help the process and to make it easier and to avoid all sorts of hassle further down the line. So our CEO, Leslie Batchelor, who is also the Director General of the Institute of Export, she will be drawing upon her decades of experience as a champion of British export to give tips and practical guidance on succeeding as an exporter, and more importantly, on how you can plan towards succeeding as an exporter. So this is definitely worth a check, and I definitely recommend this particular webinar. One of the things she will be talking about is our brand new Export Action Plan, a planning tool to help new exporters start selling overseas. We launched this last month, I think it was, and it's been designed to help people in exactly your position, new exporters who are planning to start exporting, and to guide them through each step of the journey. So please have a look at the website for more details, and if you hurry, you can complete your action plan and submit it to our competition for the chance to win £3,000 of funding for your plans to export to a new market. The deadline for that is Friday, December the 18th. So please check it out. It's all free, and it's definitely very useful. So why not? And that's all from us for now. Please take our survey as you leave the webinar. Let us know what you thought and recommend any suggestions and feedback for the future. And thank you for attending, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.